be talking about the movie The Shining today, which is about the story of a man named Jack Torrance who moves to a very secluded hotel with his wife and his child, Wendy and Danny. So the reason that Jack and his family moved to this hotel is because Jack takes a job as the caretaker for the hotel during the hotel's off-season, which is during the winter time. One of the reasons Jack takes this job is because he is a writer and he wants to focus on writing without having to worry about many other responsibilities. So as Jack interviews for this job in the beginning of the movie, Mr. Ullman, who is the manager for the hotel, warns him that the isolation of living at the hotel for so long with no other people around often gets to people's heads and is not very healthy for them. He also tells Jack that this hotel was the location for a very gruesome murder many years before, when a man murdered his wife and his 2 daughters. When Jack accepts the job and Jack and his family move into the hotel, Mr. Ullman gives them a tour of the hotel. During this tour, Mr. Ullman tells them that this hotel was the location of an Indian burial ground years before. So all 3 of these things that Mr. Ullman tells Jack hint that the hotel, there's something very wrong with this hotel, and we see as we continue watching the movie that there are some kind of evil presence that haunts this hotel. Jack slowly succumbs to the evil in this hotel, but Wendy and Danny remain unchanged throughout the movie. This suggests that it is not just the evil that overcomes Jack, it is also his own selfishness and his tendency to isolate himself. Instead of joining Wendy and Danny in their own fun, Jack plays ball with himself by throwing a tennis ball against the walls of the hotel and it bounces back to himself. And also, instead of joining on Wendy and Danny's snowball fight, Jack just watches them from the window with a maniacal expression on his face. Also, Wendy and Danny experience this society through watching TV, and Wendy also talks to people on the radio. Jack does neither of these things, and instead he interacts more with the evil presence that is haunting the hotel. He talks to a non-existent bartender, he kisses a young woman who turns old in his arms, and he also discusses his family with the old butler, Grady. At the end of the movie, Jack's selfishness, combined with the evil of the hotel and his tendency to isolate himself, all end in Jack's demise, and he tries to kill Wendy and Danny, to the horror of anyone watching the movie. So The Shining, like any other good horror movie, creates a sense of fear in the audience. However, the best quality horror movies create fear in something that is actually worthy of being feared rather than just some unrealistic monster or event. So The Shining creates fear in the idea that we can be overtaken by our own selfishness, our own tendency to isolate ourselves. And it does this through the shooting techniques, the set, and the timeline of the movie. So the camera placement in The Shining is very important in creating fear in the audience. In the beginning of the movie, when Mr. Ullman is giving the Torrances a tour of the hotel, the camera is a very far away distance from the Torrances, and as we see them walk through the lobby, pillars and a staircase pass in between the camera and the characters. This kind of gives the impression that the camera is a perspective of another being that's watching the characters. In a very similar way, Danny rides his bike around the hotel floors, and the camera follows him from behind. Now neither Danny nor the audience can see what's behind Danny, which creates discomfort and the lack of awareness of what is behind him, and it makes the audience fear that something evil might be lurking up on him. In 2 almost identical scenes, the camera zooms in on Jack as he's writing at his desk in the big open lobby. This again gives the feeling of some evil presence that's creeping up on Jack. In a very similar way, Wendy, instead of Jack, is standing at Jack's desk and is looking over his papers, and in the same way it did in the other 2 scenes, the camera zooms in on Wendy from behind. Except in this scene, we see Jack steps very slightly into the side of the picture, and we can see kind of the back and the side of his face through the shadows. This kind of implies that we're seeing things from Jack's perspective, and now, instead of fearing an evil being creeping up on Jack, we're actually fearing Jack himself and what he's going to do. The set also plays a huge role in contributing to the sense of fear and disorientation in the movie. So, Jack works in, he writes in the huge open lobby, which shows his selfishness in that he's taking up such a huge space and not allowing anyone else to enjoy it. But it also highlights the fact that he is isolating himself, because he doesn't allow anyone else to come into the lobby while he's working, and it's such a huge room, it makes him look even more alone. The colors also play a huge role in creating dread in the audience. For instance, when Jack is talking to the old butler Grady, who first puts the idea of murdering Wendy and Danny in his mind, they're talking in an almost completely red bathroom. The red here symbolizes the blood that Jack is eventually going to seek by trying to kill Wendy and Danny, and it also alludes to the visions of the torrents of blood that Danny sees throughout the movie. The outdoor elements of the set also play a huge role in creating this sense of disorientation and fear, because the maze represents the disorientation that Jack feels throughout the movie, and it eventually assists in his own demise. The weather also worsens as Jack's state of mind worsens. The weather becomes more and more snowy, and it cuts off their telephone lines, and it becomes almost unbearable to be in. And in the end of the movie, Jack goes into the maze to try to find Danny, but he ends up losing his way, and he can't get out of the maze, and he freezes to death. So both of these elements combine to kill Jack in the end. Also, the timeline of the movie and the way it's divided into 10 sections adds to the sense of disorientation that Jack feels throughout the movie. So Jack has a very abnormal sleep schedule in this movie. He wakes up much later than Wendy and Danny do, and at one point in the movie, Danny wants to go to his room to get a toy, but Wendy doesn't want him to because she's scared that he's going to wake up Jack, who just went to sleep a few hours ago. However, we can see through the window that it's daylight outside, so it's probable that Jack didn't go to sleep till the very early hours of the morning. This disorienting sleep schedule also shows itself in the way that the movie is divided up. So the first 3 sections actually present themselves in a logical order, and they are first the interview, then closing day, and then a month later, so a month when the family has been living there for a month. However, after that, the movie is divided up by days of the week, but it's not just like a regular linear week. It's an odd order of days, and it doesn't have a date attached, so we don't exactly know how all these dates relate to each other. And the order of it is Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday, and then Wednesday. So this all this disorients the audience, just like Jack is disoriented by his own sleep schedule. Also, the division of the time gets continually more and more specific. First it starts with a month, and then it goes to days, and then it goes to hours in the last 2 sections of the movie, which is 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. So this kind of serves as a countdown in the movie, which in and of itself creates tension and fear, because it makes the audience wonder what's going to happen at the end of this countdown. So all of these elements combine really well to create fear in the audience, but the worst fear that all these things create is the possibility that you or someone that you could care about could also go through a similar transformation that Jack goes through, that you could become overrun by selfishness, by isolating yourself, just as Jack does. So this movie was very well done, and I highly recommend watching it if you haven't already. Thank you.